You already know the odds. You know the number is somewhere near 1 in 300 million. You know the ticket in your hand is almost certainly worthless. And yet, standing in that line, you reach for your wallet anyway. Why? The easy answer is that you're being foolish. That you're bad at math. That a small, weak part of you got tricked for a moment. But the real answer is far stranger. Because you are not broken. You are not stupid. You are doing something your species has been doing for thousands of years, long before there were jackpots, long before there were numbers printed on slips of paper. You are reaching for a feeling. And that feeling is older than money itself. Let's go back. Not 100 years. Not 1,000. Go all the way back to the moment a human being first decided to leave an outcome up to chance on purpose. Your distant ancestors lived in a world they could not control. The rain came or it didn't. The herd appeared or it vanished. A child lived or a child died. To survive in that world, your brain became a prediction machine. It learned to scan for patterns. It learned to guess what came next. And when it guessed right, it rewarded you with a small, warm pulse of satisfaction. That pulse has a source. A neuroscientist named Wolfram Schultz spent decades studying a single chemical in the brain called dopamine. Most people think dopamine is the chemical of pleasure. It isn't. Schultz discovered something far more interesting. Dopamine doesn't fire when you get the reward. It fires when you expect it. It is the chemical of anticipation. It is the feeling of maybe. Sit with that for a moment. The thing that lights up your brain is not winning. It's the possibility of winning. It's the seconds before you know. Now think about what a lottery ticket actually is. It is not a chance at money. It is a small, cheap, perfectly legal dose of maybe. You are not buying numbers. You are buying the right to imagine. And humans have been buying that right for a very, very long time. The first traces appear in ancient China, more than 2,000 years ago, during the Han-dynasty. Archaeologists have found slips marked with symbols that look strikingly like a game of Keno, a numbers game still played today. Legend says the proceeds helped fund enormous state projects. Whether or not the legend is exactly true, the bones of the idea were already there. Let people pick. Let chance decide. And quietly, let the house collect. The Romans did it too, but they dressed it up as generosity. At lavish banquets, the Emperor Augustus would hand each guest a token. Some tokens were worth a slave. Some were worth a single worthless trinket. You didn't know which one you held until the moment it was revealed. The Romans called these gifts apophoreta. We would call it a raffle. The emperor called it a party. Either way, the guests loved it, because the Romans understood something we are only now proving in laboratories. People will sit through almost anything for the thrill of not yet knowing. Centuries later, the idea grew up. In the towns of the Low Countries in the 1500s, in places like Bruges and Ghent, something new appeared. Public lotteries that paid out actual money. The town would sell tickets, and the money raised would fix the city walls or feed the poor. The word they used came from the Dutch word lot, meaning fate. Meaning destiny. The thing you could not control. Read that again. They named it after fate. Because that is what you are really buying. Not a number. A small private negotiation with destiny itself. By 1567, Queen Elizabeth I had chartered the first English state lottery. By the time Europeans crossed the ocean to build colonies, the lottery crossed with them. The first English settlement at Jamestown was partly funded by lotteries back home. Harvard ran them. Yale ran them. So did Princeton. Some of the oldest, most respected institutions on Earth were built, in part, on the same impulse that makes you pause at a gas station counter tonight. So this is not a modern weakness. This is ancient machinery. But here's the question that matters. If you know the odds are hopeless, why does the machinery still work on you? To answer that, we have to talk about two men who changed how the world understands the human mind. Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. In the 1970s, they discovered that your brain does not weigh probability the way a calculator does. When a chance is very, very small, you don't treat it as nearly zero. You round it up. You treat 1 in 300 million and 1 in 1,000 as if they live in the same neighborhood. They both feel like a door that's slightly open. And a door that's slightly open is all your imagination needs. This is why nobody buys a ticket and pictures losing. You picture the win. You picture the house, the quitting, the face of the boss you'd never see again. The smallness of the odds disappears, and the size of the dream takes its place. Kahneman and Tversky gave this a name. They called it the overweighting of small probabilities. You could just call it hope doing what hope does. But there's something even sneakier happening. In a laboratory at Cambridge, a researcher named Luke Clark studied what happens in your brain during a near miss. Two matching symbols and a third that lands just one space off. By every rational measure, a near miss is a loss. It is worth exactly nothing. But Clark found that a near miss lights up the same reward circuits as an actual win. Your brain treats almost like a promise. It whispers, "You were so close, try again." And so you do. This is the trap that has no floor. Because in a game of pure chance, almost means nothing. There is no skill creeping closer. There is no progress. There is only the feeling of progress, manufactured by a brain that evolved to chase patterns in a world that no longer has them. Now layer one more thing on top. Decades earlier, a psychologist named B.O.F. Skinner put animals in boxes with levers. When a lever gave food every single time, the animal pressed it calmly, only when hungry. But when the lever gave food at random, sometimes yes, sometimes no, with no way to predict which, the animal pressed it again and again and again, far past hunger, far past reason. Skinner called this a variable ratio schedule. It is the single most powerful pattern of reward ever discovered. And it describes a lottery perfectly. It describes a slot machine perfectly. It describes the pull to refresh on the screen in your pocket perfectly. You are the animal. The lever is everywhere. So picture the full machine now. A brain that overweights tiny odds. A brain that feels near misses as victories. A brain wired to crave random rewards above predictable ones. And underneath all of it, a chemical that pays you in anticipation before you've won anything at all. The lottery didn't invent any of this. The lottery is just the cleanest, most honest mirror of what was already inside you. That's why it goes viral every time the jackpot climbs. Watch what happens when the number gets big enough. People who have never bought a ticket in their lives suddenly stand in line. The office pool forms. The group chat lights up. Strangers talk to each other at the register. The lottery becomes a story everyone is telling at the same time, and the dream becomes contagious. You're not just buying a ticket now. You're buying your way into a conversation the whole country is having. Missing out starts to feel like the real loss. And then the drawing happens. And you lose. Almost everyone loses. The dream evaporates in a single instant. So you'd think the winners, at least, would prove it was all worth it. Here is the strangest part of the entire story. In 1978, three researchers, Philip Brickman, Dan Coates, and Ronnie Janoff-Bullman, tracked down people who had won major lottery prizes. Real winners. Sudden, enormous wealth. And they compared them to ordinary people, and even to people who had suffered devastating accidents. What they found broke something in our common sense. Within a surprisingly short time, the lottery winners were not measurably happier than anyone else. The thrill faded. Their old problems returned, wearing new clothes. And the small daily pleasures that used to delight them, a good meal, a warm afternoon, felt duller by comparison to the one impossible day they'd had. The win didn't deliver the feeling. The win ended it. Because the feeling was never in the money. It was in the maybe. And the moment the numbers are drawn, the maybe is gone, no matter which way it falls. So what does that make the lottery, really? It's not a path to wealth. The math has always known that. It is a machine that sells you a feeling your ancestors chased across the savannah, a feeling refined over 2,000 years from Han-dynasty slips to Roman banquets to the bright screen behind the counter. It sells you the open door. The not yet knowing. The few golden seconds where every future is still possible and none have been taken away. And here is the quiet truth underneath all of it. You don't need a ticket for that feeling. You feel it before a phone buzzes. You feel it before you open a message you've been waiting for. You feel it every time you hope, and wait, and don't yet know. The lottery just put a price tag on the most human sensation there is. So the next time you stand in that line, ticket in hand, you might still buy it. There's no shame in that. You'd be in the company of emperors and queens and the founders of the oldest schools on earth. But now you'll know what you're actually paying for. Not the millions. not the odds. You're buying a few seconds of maybe the same drug your species has always craved. You already knew the odds. It turns out the odds were never the point.